Lukman Edu, Chief Visionary Officer, Managing Director, Filmo Realty. Ola Awodipe, Head Real Estate Operations from Mixter Africa. Joe Amawe, Founder, CEO, MyPaddy.ng. Benjamin Yor Manu, FCMI Regional Manager, West Africa RICS. Where is everybody? There's only one person on the stage. And Uba Namdi, co-founder, House Africa. So we're expecting 5 more people on the stage. Please make your way up. All right, so over to you, Tosin. Get going. There's a chair behind you, so if Joel turns up, I'll ask you all to move down slightly so we can get Joel in.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Mic working? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tosin Ajose, and I'm lead advisor at Deal HQ Partners. We are a boutique commercial law firm, and we do a lot of work in the real estate space. And I'm sure you know that we could not have ended this conference without talking about Proptech, because that is the future, and we need to be sure that we are all preparing for where the market is going. So we're going to be talking about whether West Africa is ready for Proptech. And I have with me in conversation Lukman Edu from Filmo Realty. I have Ola Awodipe from Mixter Africa. I have Muideen Dosumu from Gate Pass, Nigeria, and Uba Namji from House Africa. So thank you, guys. We're going to dig right through it. Do we think that this market is ready for Proptech? So we know that in today's world, business is now driven by technology and innovation. And everywhere in the world, you will see that any economy that is not, playing these indices is really not moving forward. So would you say that the West African market is taking pattern over what is happening in the world? And are we seeing a lot of technology and innovation in our market? Lukman.
Okay, thank you for having me. So I'll firstly start with the real estate industry. Around the world, real estate has been one of the slowest to conform with the technology evolution in the world. I mean, I brought my tablet up here to read some stats that I got from KPMG recently. That KPMG did a survey of 130 real estate decision makers in the world recently in 36 different countries, and they talked to 86% of the respondents, acknowledged that technology had to come into real estate, but only 24% of them actually had a technology plan. That, funnily enough, in the Americas and the Asias, they thought that Proptech was going to play less impact in real estate compared to the Africas and the Middle Eastern countries. So before we even talk about West Africa, real estate as a whole, we're behind in the game of getting technology to come in. And why is that? I think that we see a clash in generations, where real estate being so capital intensive, where we're seeing an older generation playing a leading role in real estate, while technology is more driven by the millennials. So there's that difference where there needs to be more of collaboration between the real estate people, so the guys with the cash, and the millennials, so the guys with the technology. So that's one thing. So coming to West Africa now, definitely I think that in the last 2-3 years we're seeing a lot more happening in PropTech, where we're seeing, and why is because we have our own unique challenges that other places in the world might not have. So funny enough, I'm actually thinking that I was having some conversations with some people outside, Bolaji of Brawl and such, and we were talking about how we see technology play a bigger impact here than we see in other sides of the world. For example, the boom of the mobile phones, that we sort of skipped a few steps, and all of a sudden we caught on to mobile phones. And the same thing that I think we're going to see in blockchain, where in leasing and selling of land, where anyone that knows blockchain is be able to in England and such, You can go online and you can see the valuation of your land, and obviously selling and buying land isn't such a big problem. But in places like here, I mean, anyone that's tried to buy and sell land, it would take up to 6 months to a year just to do all the legal agreements and such. So there's a bigger challenge here for things like that needs solutions for. So yes, West Africa is coming in, obviously with our smartphones and stuff. That is a dashboard that technology can be shared around. So yes, shortly, yes, West Africa is ready for Proptech, and Proptech is coming in here. And you'd be surprised if it might happen faster than we see in the more developed world because of our own unique challenges.
Right. Okay. We can go ahead, Nadine.
So I think for Proptech, I think one of the things that you look at driving the ship globally is that we're now in the era of the customer. So if you look at across industries, so banking, for example, the new generation, you're very impatient, you want your things fast, you have more access to data, you can compare. So that's driving how we consume experiences and services across board. So how I expect to be treated in my bank is really how I expect to be treated in my home. So I think that's the main thing. And I think real estate is now at that tipping point where you realize that real estate is actually an experience market. So whether it's brokerage, what you're selling to the customer is the experience, how easy it is to finalize the transaction. Whether it's asset management is how are you able to communicate my information on the performance of my asset to me? Or whether it's facility management, how are you able to make me feel as if I belong to my property and I have that affinity for it? So that's really what's driving.
Right. So I'm going to just put a little twist to it. Do we think that majority of the players in the Nigerian market see technology as a threat or as an opportunity? Ola?
Well, there's been a lot of talk, by leveraging technology, there's going to be a lot of people that will be losing their jobs at the end of the day. But I think we need to look at it from another angle. What are the challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis? What are the pain points in our business? And how can we look at use technology, to leverage and resolve these issues that we're having? For instance, Mixed Africa, we're a real estate development company. We sell properties. So we look at each stage of the value chain. For instance, a client comes. We require KYC information from them. That process of actually getting that information takes time, and it adds to the overall transaction duration at the end of the day. How can we possibly use technology, to reduce the time it takes, during that transaction process? How can we use technologies such as blockchain, which I'm sure we'll come to later on, for KYC information? I know there's other countries around the world that are looking at, possible solutions. So I think mainly it boils down to what are the challenges that we're facing and how can we use technology to resolve them at the end of the day.
So in your institution, do you think that you guys are taking a position that, that Proptech is an opportunity for you to drive your business?
Yes, very much so. Those of us here that have been onto property listing sites, that is Proptech at the end of the day. Proptech more or less describes the convergence of property and technology for greater efficiency within real estate. So, using a property listing site is using Proptech at the end of the day. But if you look back, the early Proptech, or what is described as Proptech 1.0, was your early CRMs and property listing site. But now we're seeing an evolution to Proptech 2.0, whereby you have new players, new startups within the industry that are coming up with innovative solutions to the challenges that we face today. For instance, the mortgage uptake in terms of our transactions probably represents 1% or less of the transactions that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So now you have startups that are coming in with solutions that allow clients, for instance, to pay on a monthly basis. So it's just addressing the challenges that we face and what solutions are out there that can actually deal with them.
So Uba, let's talk about you. You are a tech startup and you operate in the real estate space. So would you say that technology has allowed you have an easy route to entry in the market? And how has it allowed you to position yourself in comparison to the traditional, businesses that operate within your space?
Okay. Okay, looking at in terms of our own aspect and property technology, yes, technology has actually helped us to enter the market because me being a developer, I don't need to know much. What I need to know is identify a problem, put it into a program, design a software that can actually solve this problem. So I don't need to pay someone to do it for me. I do it myself, look at the market analysis, find a way on how to, these days, social media is there for you to advertise this application. So once I do that, I'm already into the market. So all I need to do is to start looking for means of scaling up, getting more customers and getting more users to be able to use the application. So it's really a competitive advantage to me to enter into the market, and at the same time, it's also very cheap for me to start up a business.
Muhyiddin, we would like to hear from you as well. I know that you are also a tech startup. So, I mean, how did technology help you? And how did it make coming into the market easy for you in comparison to, I mean, a couple years back when you had to, use the traditional route to market?
Yeah, so I think as much as I like to look at myself as a startup, I was in the real estate industry before, so I worked at Brawl, Nigeria. So I think how technology has helped is that what it's really done is before it would have had to be, you have internal meetings, it would have been a longer process to test out the innovation cycle. But what it is we've been able to identify a problem, and then we've mapped out how we can solve solutions on the customer journey. And I just think for technology, it's really that speed to market and that ability to scale.
Okay, so let's talk about data, right? We know that innovation and technology only thrive in a market where there is access to data. So what would you guys say your experience has been? I mean, is there enough, data to support, the Proptech market? And if there isn't, what would you expect to see in the market for us to have a holistic Proptech market?
I can talk a little bit about my experience and data. I mean, I saw another study where IBM said, I think in the last 2 to 3 years, 90% of the data in the world would be available. So in the last 3 years, 90% of data is now available. That is in the world has now come to us, and it came in the last 2 to 3 years. So, yes, obviously, data helps. Data is Proptech. The foundation of Proptech is data, where it's about understanding the market, seeing the arbitrage opportunities in the market, and figuring out where you can position yourself with that. So yes, so I said that because I'm a property management facility management company, we're only now starting to explore where we're now seeing new opportunities in the market where we can provide our services. Where, for example, we're now looking at how we can provide services to properties that are not in our estates, and seeing where there's demand and supply. I saw these guys that were here a few last session. The guys that were showing you consumer classes, which is very interesting to us. So those are the kinds. So yes, so that's making it easier for you to test your at least less risk before you bring new products into the market. And I don't really work with data as much as they do, so I'm sure they have more to say than I do.
Yeah, so I think for data, I think it's been very interesting. I'll say no, there hasn't been enough. I think, there hasn't been enough. And even for a market where you know that the data is generated, it's just not captured in the proper way, it's just not shared. I don't think people, but the industry as a whole has really, because I mean, if you look at globally, so real estate is like the largest asset class. So you have a home everywhere. You have data points all over the city that you should be collecting from. But the way to aggregate and extract from that hasn't really been done properly. In our own experience for Gate Pass, when we were trying to size the market, to say, map out the number of communities or number of estates. I mean, so you'd say, let's do a stretch, let's try and extrapolate, or let's look at utility company databases, But then ideally, in an ideal, and I mean, we've looked at Estate Intel as well, who are our partners, research partners, and they've been able to add a lot of value to us. But in an ideal situation, when you are trying to get investment, you need to be able to say, this is what the market is accurately. And it feels like you're fishing in the dark if you cannot size properly.
Yeah. I'd like to add something too. That real estate as a whole, as I said, there's a lot of inefficient processes that the rest of the world is moving away from. For example, now, if you go to England or some of the developed worlds, you can go online and you can see the valuation of your homes. So, I mean, obviously, but that is a whole employment role in Nigeria where you get valuers, and these are all added costs to buying and selling homes. So these are, and obviously, or agency, where, as I said, Nigeria, we have started moving towards where a lot of people, I think about 80 or 70%, are now buying and selling homes, at least leasing homes online. So they're going on to the Toilets and the Property Pros and such to rent property. So they now information with the internet and with your smartphones. The information is now at your hands. Where at least on the letting and sales side, people are being able to transact, or at least skip the agency fee that they'll normally have to give to a third-party agent, and this is now reducing the inefficient costs of the real estate market. So imagine now that if you didn't have valuers, I mean, obviously now with the Bitcoin and the new softwares, you can actually you can actually automate your contracts. You can skip the lawyers, you can skip the valuers, you can skip the agents, and you can now transact all together. That can.
You don't want to be skipping all of us, though.
I'm trying to be as I said some things that were very controversial. Last time I was asked to present, that wasn't taken so well. But it's the truth, and that's where the market is going. That these are all added costs and inefficient costs in the transaction of property. Where if you're able to find a way where a solution using tech to skip all of that, you could save up to 15% of the cost of transactions using tech. So as I said,
right. So let me bring this, back home, and I'm sure a lot of us can relate to this. Is there a problem in Africa? I mean, all over the world, people are getting into the culture of sharing data freely, because you know that is what is going to enhance markets. Why do we, in spite of all the information and data that many corporates sit on, why do people just have this leaning towards, let me just keep it to myself? I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think that, anything is going to change in the very short future? Or do you think that we need to change this approach and become a bit more collaborative in the way we share information? Or is it just an African thing?
Okay. On that aspect, I think the government has to start first by giving access to information and data, so that the companies or companies can actually lay their hands on this data, and another person can actually from this company also have access to this data through API and all that. So the government is the people, I feel, that can be able to help first on this aspect. Because, okay, let me use land registry as an example. We are, for now, on the blockchain industry, we'll talk about the land registry and all that. It's working outside there very well because they already have this data online. So someone can actually plug in from the API and use a blockchain to be able to make it better. But in this our region, West Africa, where most of things are being done on the paper, it will be very, very difficult for land registry on blockchain to work, except there is a collaboration from the government too. Because the government, and another thing is, if Lagos is doing it and Port Harcourt is not doing it and Abuja is not doing it, it's still not complete, and it will still fail. It will still fail in the future. So the best thing is the government to be able to help first give us this access to this data, then we can make use of this data very well. So another aspect where this data can actually be shared freely is maybe two companies collaborating together and help themselves and share data within themselves and grow. or there is a patronage, maybe a company bringing out an API for another company to be able to use, maybe make payments and use the data for their own business too.
Ola, what do you think?
I think the data is very much there. One of the challenges that we have is ease of access to that data. And I believe that's where the startups come into play, providing solutions that will give us access to this information. For instance, in the UK, I can go onto a website, I can check the price that a property sold at, and every single price it's sold at, previously, And so it's very much, the startups, providing solutions to help us access the data.
I'd like to add, I also think it's a generational thing where if you look at the spaces where people are working, for example, workstation, where it's more of a collaborative kind of environment where they're already set up to share information between themselves and share resources between themselves, or we're seeing the app developers creating open source softwares so people could plug into the thing. I believe Estate, Intel, and all of them are doing such things. So I think it's also a generational thing where I think that the millennials and the new generation coming up are already collaborating more in the way they work and in the softwares and the projects that they do.
Yeah. I think one thing to add as well is that, and it's more of a use case. So I think as an industry, we've not been able to build the business case for the data platform. So I think in an ideal scenario, yes, you want existing database, but the fact is somebody has to go out and actually put their money where their mouth is, source the data and build it. So I know back then when I was a research analyst at Brawl, so we'd have to do a lot of research, and from someone who currently or has worked in management consulting, I always felt that compared to the type of data I can get on maybe like a Reuters or Bloomberg, like it didn't really make sense. And then if you look at other markets, you have like a CoStar, and then you're just like, okay, what's going on? What's going on here? But I think recently, and if I look at Estate Intel, for example, it was really that at some point in time, you need to decide that, okay, we're going to chase data, and that's the focus. So I think for us, it's really about building solutions that enable people. Because I feel like for the industry, if you are able to present the business case on how it will drive value, eventually customers will come, and then we'll have a data pool that everybody can benefit from.
I feel as if this is sponsored by Estate Intel. Everyone is bringing up Estate Intel.
I know, right? We're going to have to, Muhyiddin is going to have to explain why we're doing that. Okay, a lot of people, when you talk Proptech, I mean, what comes naturally to mind is blockchain. So we're going to talk a bit about blockchain. Ola, I'm going to come to you. So tell us, what are the possibilities, in our market? What are the things that we can see? What are the changes that we can expect to happen, if we decide to, focus and deploy, blockchain in the property market in Africa? What are the kinds of values that you think that we can see in the market? And how can this help us to deepen, the property market?
Okay, so blockchain more or less allows the exchange of peer-to-peer assets over a distributed ledger. I'm just going to bring it back home in terms of the challenges that we face in our business on a day-to-day basis. I had mentioned earlier on about KYCs. There are currently companies out there or even organizations, looking at putting KYC on the blockchain, so that financial institutions can access that information. So I'd mentioned earlier that customers, getting that information from them, there's always a delay, which delays the overall transaction process. But if that information is available on a decentralized network that anybody can access, it reduces the time required to access that information. Another area that we face or we have challenges with is the exchange of contracts with buyers. Typically, some of our buyers are based abroad, so we have to send out contracts to them. That process in itself can take weeks, if not months, before we actually get the executed contract back. Technologies such as blockchain can allow smart contracts whereby the exchange of, contracts more or less happens instantly. So that delay experience, months, weeks, is reduced to a matter of hours. Another area I would say again that we have challenges with is, especially within real estate, large assets, the investments of large assets are typically restricted to institutional investors. Blockchain, for instance, can allow the tokenization of assets, whereby it's broken down into shares and individual investors can actually invest in a particular asset. So I think that's very much the future that we're looking at, a future that's decentralized, more or less, in terms of real estate.
Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, the tokenization aspect is actually what House Africa is doing, trying to allow people to list a building, a project, maybe to have a pre-sale of this project. People can invest in this project and with a little amount of money, and also earn the return of investment when this project is being, after building and it sells, or the rental return of investment. So that is really, these are one of the things blockchain can do. Like she said also, the smart contract area, where documents can be signed and saved on the blockchain. So you don't really need to send it abroad again. You can just do it online, and it's seconds. Everything is done. Then another aspect is the cryptocurrency aspect, where you can be able to use these digital tokens to actually acquire these properties instead of using fiat currency, which if you are, for example, you are abroad, you want to acquire property in Nigeria, maybe using Western Union, the charges and all that. Using the digital token now, like maybe Bitcoin, Ethereum, or other cryptocurrencies, these transactions is being done in seconds, and the charges are less. Imagine sending $100 million with a charge of 0.06 cents, $0.06, instead of paying huge amount of money on the Western Union money transfer. So this cryptocurrency also helps to make transactions fast, secured, and cheaper.
Okay, so just leading on from what you've said about cryptocurrencies. So many West African countries have outlawed, the use of cryptocurrencies in their countries, including yours truly, Nigeria. Now, everywhere in the world, people are beginning to open and accept, this as, a common and acceptable mode of transaction settlement, especially in real estate. So my question will be, this regulatory restriction, what are we going to see happen over the next, couple of months and years? Are people just going to bypass the government and leave, just disregard that law? Again, the market is global, right? So we're not necessarily talking transactions between, two parties in Nigeria. But what do you guys foresee? Are we going to see a lot more of this coming into our market, and are Nigerians going to accept, transactions that are settled with cryptos? What do you guys see?
Okay. The problem with cryptocurrency, or what I will call it, is what the African government are seeing about it, is because of the volatile nature of this cryptocurrency. For example, last 3 days, Bitcoin fell from 6,300 to 5,400. If you have Bitcoin, you have lost some thousands of dollars. So these are the things that are actually making the government, the African government, to feel more skeptical about this cryptocurrency. But the beauty part of it is that blockchain can actually work without cryptocurrency. So you don't really need the cryptocurrency to have a blockchain. you can build your company cannot build their own blockchain without using cryptocurrency and make their transactions transparent and all that and secured.
I think Lukman is itching to say something.
Yeah. So funny enough, blockchain can actually make governments work easier. For but funny enough, one of the countries that is in the forefront of blockchain is Honduras. We're currently now in Honduras. I'm reading somewhere that you can actually transfer these things. They're actually playing around with transferring the title documents from one you can actually use blockchain to do that. I think that you're right that it's I think where government is might be a little bit resistant to blockchain is the fact of the lack of control and lack of visibility of what's happening in the market. For example, now with blockchain, nobody has to go to a government office to go and find information or to send or to pay to visit people to pay whatever added information costs there are in getting information or exchanging title documents. All of these things can be done, can transfer between me, my phone, and his phone. He can sell me land without having to go to a house. So it's and again, like I said, trying to not be as controversial as it was last time. But in all the different taxes, whether legal or illegal, in between transactions, it's all eroded. I said we're talking about up to 15% of the cost. There's a lot of money. 15% going for contracts, for advisory fees, for the taxes. In Nigeria, looking at things, that can come to about $30 million per annum. That is an efficient cost that can be saved between transactions. But I said it's so governments, I see why, where there are some the lack of visibility and lack of control in transactions is probably what is making governments less resistant. And also the positive side, which is the ability to get what's owed to them on every transaction that happens, which is access to the language being able to happen online.
That one of the reasons why there isn't much progress in the market is because at the end of the day these markets are regulated by government, and there isn't much knowledge or information in their circles about some of these innovative changes that are happening in the market. So how do you think that we can carry them along?
I think a way to look at it is, for example, if you look at London, so London has a chief digital officer. So it's really about, at the government level, you deciding that we are going to be active in this industry. We're going to look at our environment. We're going to look for how to position our city to be smarter. So even if you look at London further as a use case, so JLL and Cato worked on a product for London called Grow London. And what it really does is it provides information about transportation times in the States, property values in the States, provides information about where opportunity is, zoning maps. So until government actually takes like an active role, which is really true upskilling and carving a particular role or function for it, then it might not get as much traction as you want. But I think another way to look at it as well is also using the British government and London example is that they're also embedded in a lot of programs with startups. So London, the UK government has a fund where they help and they partner with KPMG and some other partners where they're able to identify issues at the land registry, identify issues across the industry. So the government has sort of become a solution partner to streamlining the industry. Yeah.
So on a final note, I know that many market trends, are usually driven by markets, customers, and customer expectations. So let's look at the West African market. I mean, vis-a-vis the rest of the world. Would you say that the level of sophistication and expectation of service users and consumers in this market, would you say it's changing? And would you say that they are open and acceptable to technology and technology products? And is there a demography that accepts it and another that doesn't? Or where are we generally? And I want each one of us to just, say something about this.
Absolutely. So Fillmore Realty, we were a conventional facility management, property management company. And the last 2 years, we have reinvented ourselves to become more of a Proptech company, where we're providing all our services using tech. And why? And somebody asked me here, actually, that who are my competitors? That do I see competition? And I said no, because we realized that obviously in the market now, there's especially on the high-end side of residential market, there's a huge lack of demand for there's a lot of empty properties in VI, in Ikoyi and stuff. So everyone is chasing the same, very few number of people that can afford those kind of properties. So properties now have to be able to add, so there's a lot more competition between the residential market at that level. So properties now need to add more value to be able to attract clients. So obviously the construction is already done. So what can you do to get more clients? Obviously now comes down to the services that you're providing on the thing. And this year, I said, Fillmore Realty, when we did this whole revolution and this whole getting PropTech on board, and as I said, I can talk to you a little bit more what we do, but bringing all the apps and creating more value to the tenants by creating more services, which is the whole management, grocery delivery and work requests and gate pass and all that kind of stuff. This year, we signed on full-on cities that Fillmore Realty is now managing, that we're seeing developers hand over their properties without even bidding process because they need that extra value for their tenants and to attract more
think
clients.
The customers appreciate the value.
So yes, at least the developers are appreciating the idea, and we're seeing a huge demand for these things. So yes, our properties, where we're being able to sell our properties or to market our properties faster because tenants are demanding more value for their money. So and with technology, we're able to provide that extra value-added services to tenants in our properties. So yes, it definitely helped us get more tenants and get more occupancy into our properties. So yes, definitely.
Muhyiddin?
Yeah, so I think for us, the reason why we exist as a solution is because of a lot of the pain points that we've seen. So something as simple as visiting communities and having that back and forth for inefficiency or just getting in. So you have to call someone, the person has to call someone else. You spend 5 minutes back and forth. So even just eliminating those efficiencies, you have facility managers trying to communicate to entire estates, but they're doing it on a WhatsApp group. If you look at a WhatsApp group first, what population of the estate is actually on the WhatsApp group? You probably have only like the elder generation there, younger people aren't on there, so there's already that lack of inclusion. If you're not even going further into this, you post something at 5 p.m. By the time someone gets home and sees it at 8 p.m., there are probably 200 messages in between, which are really not related to the information you're trying to pass. So even like from an efficiency standpoint, you have that communities are not able to do what they want to do at the most efficient standpoint. But I think really where we're heading to is that today's customer wants convenience. Real estate is an experience business, and you have to be able to deliver the experience to your tenants and to your assets managers in terms of interactive dashboards.
Thank you. Ola, we'll hear from you quickly, and then we'll hear from Namdi, and then it'll be a wrap.
Okay, just quickly, I think what we lack at the moment is visibility of the Proptech solutions that are available, both here in Nigeria, Africa, and globally as well. And I know there's a few companies at the moment that are working on portals, that will provide information on the solutions that are out there. I'm a believer that there's certainly no need to reinvent the wheel. If there's a solution that can address the challenges and the issues that we face out there, there's no need to develop a new one, So, as I said, visibility of the solutions that are out there that can address the challenges and pain points that we face here in Nigeria.
Namdi, very quickly.
Okay, I think one of the things the users are looking out for is access to the properties, and how are they accessing this, how are they able to see these properties, the details of these properties and all that. For example, now that virtual reality technology is also coming on board, where people you don't really need to do book inspection. You can just on your phone view the house, the rooms and all that, see how it is. And I think these are the things that can be able to make the users to appreciate the property and come for the property faster.
Over to you.
Okay, can we bring in anyone from the audience? Any questions or comments? Or is everything completely clear to you? Okay. I see 2 hands up. I'll be coming to both of you, starting with...
Hello. So I just want to ask a question about blockchain, actually, and its applicability in the property market. I wanted to find out and this is a question for anybody on the panel, how soon can we start seeing the effects of this in the Nigerian market, and how do you recommend that people who are working in the space to prepare? So whether they're facility managers, whether they're property owners, whether they're service providers, what are the actions that we need to take, and how soon do we need to start making them?
From what I understand, there are already some people playing blockchain in the blockchain market in Nigeria. I heard recently that people are buying power and stuff using blockchain, and I'm aware that there's some companies in Nigeria already, and so it's very soon. It's sooner than we think it is. I mean, people think it's not. I don't think it's one of these things that we think that it's going to happen in England first before we see it here, because we have different unique challenges. The challenges we have here, they don't have there, so they don't have the demand for these things as much as we do. So I don't think we should be looking there to think that it's not there, so it won't be here. I think it's coming here faster than we think. And from what I understand, there are people already investing, or it's in preliminary stages, there are people investing in blockchain for Nigeria and actually for the Lagos market. So I won't be surprised if I see it in the next 2 to 3 years in Nigeria. I don't know, but I'll talk to.
It's very short. Go on.
I don't think we need 2 to 3 years. We are already doing that. House Africa is already doing that, where you can be able to list your properties and do your property transactions and sign your smart contracts and save them on the blockchain. We already have that. I think we have tested the test net and everything is working, and we plan launching first quarter of next year.
Okay, one more question from here.
Hi, Yamini Virani. I have to say I'm so inspired by what you all are doing. It's a definitely niche market with lots of money. So congratulations. Really quickly, and Uba, I think you already answered my question before I had a chance to ask it, but I'll go ahead anyway. Can you give us some examples of companies in Africa who are using blockchain in the real estate industry? I know you mentioned HAS, but can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Okay. Let's start with in Nigeria here we have InterSwitch. They just partnered with Microsoft to do a blockchain on supply chain. We also have us, House Africa. We are coming up with our own. I think we have one other one, CISO Global. They are working on land registry on blockchain. We have Bitland in Ghana. It's also land registry. They started since 2013, and they have been going. Then in Kenya, we have Land Buy, which is also land registry. I think virtually most of these things are Most of these companies are going for land registry on the blockchain. So these are the few companies that I have came in contact with on what they are doing on blockchain.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's leave it there. Round of applause for our moderator. Did an excellent job, and our panelists. We thank you for giving us insight into Proptech.